y'all doing the Facebook stuff or just the?
Yeah.
Okay. You want to let me know when you're ready? Ready? Okay. Hey, good morning. We're here today. I've got our state attorney Larry Basford and Sergeant Chris Williams with our criminal investigation division. We want to announce the results of a drug overdose investigation that we've been conducting that the state attorney's office got a conviction on yesterday. Very pleased with the results of this case. Certainly a sad situation that occurred on January 23rd of last year on Surf Drive, where we responded to an overdose investigation. We really take a comprehensive approach to these overdoses because it's, you know, people's lives that are at stake, and people are losing their lives over the use of drugs, and people that are dealing drugs that are causing that. So anytime we have an overdose, we send both our criminal investigations division as well as our special investigations or our drug unit out on those, and we treat them like a homicide. We run leads to determine where those drugs came from. We do toxicology. We have crime scene out there. We work them like a homicide case, because that's what it is when somebody provides a substance to somebody that results in their death. So in this case, we had a male subject that took heroin and fentanyl, caused him to go into an overdose. Our suspect in this case, Sidney Taylor, then provided him with methamphetamine as he was in an overdose state. Prevented his brother from calling 911, and many times we can respond out to these scenes, especially when it's a heroin, fentanyl, or opiate overdose, and provide Narcan, and many times have saved lives with that substance. But the suspect in this case, Sidney Taylor, prevented that from happening. She fled the scene prior to our arrival. And so an investigation was conducted, led by Sergeant Williams and Lieutenant Francis with our drug unit, in putting the case together and determining that Sidney Taylor had in fact provided those drugs and fled the scene, prevented 911 from being called, so help could be summoned. And working with the state attorney's office, our assistant state attorney Bob Sombathy works in the major crimes unit, which shows the level of dedication that Mr. Basford has to these kind of cases and treating those like a homicide case. We were able to charge Ms. Taylor with manslaughter, and yesterday we were able to, through the work of our state attorney's office, get a 14-year sentence for manslaughter, which is, that sends a very strong message that if you're going to provide these deadly drugs in the community, that you could potentially face prosecution and spend many years in prison for that. So I want to thank you, Larry, as well as Mr. Sombathy for your work in that, and we just hope that sends a message that we're not going to tolerate that. We're going to, one, work with our drug unit to get these drugs off the street, but if somebody provides drugs that results in a death, could very well face manslaughter charges. I think this is one of the first cases in our circuit that we've been able to bring to fruition, from a overdose investigation to a charge, and then now a plea that results in significant prison time. And it's a very timely topic right now, because we are going through a situation here in the county in the month of February, working with the other law enforcement agencies in Bay County, where we have seen 55 drug overdoses in the month of February. 31 of those, we believe, involved heroin and fentanyl, and 8 of those have been fatal. And I would submit that if not for the use of Narcan, that quite a few more of those would have been fatal drug overdoses. So this is a warning to those that are selling drugs in Bay County, that if you provide drugs to an individual that passes away, then both the Bay County Sheriff's Office, our local police departments, are going to come after you to try to put a case together for manslaughter. And I think that Mr. Basford has proven that his office is going to follow through on those with significant prison time for those. So would like to turn it over to Mr. Basford, and again, we thank you and Mr. Sombathy for the work you've done on this.
Thank you, Sheriff Ford. First of all, I would like to extend my sympathies to the Justin Peters family. And then I would like to thank Sheriff Ford and the men and women that worked on this case. They presented a thorough investigation to us, and that's the reason that it resulted in a thorough prosecution, a successful prosecution that concluded with the sentencing yesterday for manslaughter. This case was prosecuted, as he said, by Bob Somathy, who is the chief of our Major Crimes Division. And then we certainly appreciate his work and the people that, on my staff that worked on this also. And finally, I would just like to say that, echo what Sheriff Ford has intimated and said that, you know, when this is a tragic case, and I hope it serves as a reminder to our community that ingesting just a little bit of an illegal substance can sometimes be lethal. We will continue to work with law enforcement and our community partners to keep our neighborhoods safe from drug dealers, and I commend the work that Sheriff Ford and his men and women conducted in this case. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you, sir. Sergeant, you got anything to say? I think y'all covered it pretty well. Appreciate your work on this case. Lieutenant Francis, thank you for your work and your unit's work. So, with that, we'll take any questions that you may have.
So when you said that there's been 55 overdoses in the month of February, is this a significant rise from January, December, and other recent months?
Yeah, when we look at back in 2020, we had 343 non-fatal and 25 fatal overdoses back in 2020. So we are seeing, you know, where the month of February is about 15% of what we saw in 2020. So, and we also work very closely with our police chiefs on these. Lieutenant Francis has brought together a group of drug investigators to make sure that we're coordinating on these to see if we have suspects in common. There could very well be additional charges that come forth from some of these overdose cases. These cases take a little bit longer than most cases to arrive at a charge because a lot of it rests on toxicity. We send that off to FDLE, sometimes that through the medical examiner's office, sometimes that can take months for that to come back, and the prosecution of these cases are very specific on result. Pill, but is actually a counterfeited pill that may contain fentanyl. So when you're ingesting these substances, you never know in these times whether that substance is going to contain a deadly amount of fentanyl or not.
No, it seems like it's been a pretty busy year for the Sheriff's Office already. Any thoughts just on recent efforts to kind of keep the area safe?
Well, it's what we do, and I'm very proud of the men and women at the Sheriff's Office and our partners at the police departments and our prosecutors at the State Attorney's Office. You know, this is a system that has to work together to keep the community safe, and it's all about our relationships and all rowing in the same direction and trying to keep the community safe. But we're equally carrying on the legacy of the Sheriff's Office that was set by Sheriff McKeithen, sitting in the back corner here, where we are not going to tolerate drugs being brought into our community, because we see them destroy lives, not just in overdoses, but lives and families. You know, anytime somebody's addicted to these substances, their mother, their father, their kids are affected by it, and many times we see this turn into a generational issue where we've got individuals that are addicted to drugs, and because it's the only lifestyle their children have known, then they go on to become drug abusers as well. So we're going to be vigilant and diligent to keep drugs off the street and hold those responsible that are bringing drugs into our community.
And when it comes to the rise in overdoses, do you think that there's any reasoning behind it? Could it be related to the pandemic, people being inside? Have you guys discovered anything? Well,
there's you know, the source of supply is out there. I attended a meeting several months ago with the DEA administrator over in Tallahassee, and he indicated that during the pandemic that there was quite a bit of product that was amassing on the southern border, and felt that once things kind of opened back up, that would flow in and we would see an influx, and we've certainly seen that because methamphetamine, we used to see meth labs here in Bay County. In fact, we led the state for many years in the seizure of meth labs. It's been probably several years since we've seen a meth lab here. It's all coming over the southwest border and flowing to hub cities like Atlanta and Birmingham. People are establishing sources of supply, and then we're seeing, as you've seen in our recent activity, pounds of methamphetamine. It's not uncommon for us to 1, 3, 5 pounds of methamphetamine to be seized now.
Why do you think that is, that they've made the shift from kind of making it here to buying it elsewhere?
It's supply and demand. I think the cartels in Mexico have really increased their ability to manufacture large quantities of methamphetamine for very cheap. The prices have come way down. And again, the drug business is all about supply and demand. So if they're able to create large quantities, they're shipping it across the border and into our communities. Fentanyl comes across the southwest border, but it also comes through packages and things like that from China.
And are these overdoses, are they impacting all different kinds of people and ages?
Yes, that's one of the insidious things about opiate addiction is that it affects people from all walks of life. And many times that addiction starts by somebody going and having a surgery or an injury, and they start taking legal prescription opiate pills and get addicted to those. And then once that supply runs out, they can't stop, and they turn to these illicit channels to obtain that. So yes, we do see that across all walks of life.
If we keep seeing these numbers, February was, a lot of incidents. We keep seeing numbers like that. How do you guys plan on moving forward to, combat that? If that's something you guys haven't, been seeing.
We're going to keep our foot on the gas on the enforcement and taking this off the streets. Our drug unit does an outstanding job of focusing on the large targets that are bringing in quantities into the county, taking them off the street. Mr. Basford's office putting them in prison for a long time, as well as providing information to the public about the deadly consequences of these drugs, and hopefully, between the deterrent of enforcement and as well as educating people that this is not something to be taken lightly, that 55 of their fellow citizens in Bay County in the month of February alone have suffered from drug overdoses. 8 of those died from it. So it's a very serious situation.
And as we move into this kind of spring break season, do you have any message to people that are coming down, into Bay County and into this area and might be bringing drugs with them?
Yeah, we'll be increasing our enforcement activity out on the beach. That's always a concern of ours, is drug use during spring break, and they need to know when they come that many of these substances, even those that they may feel are not a deadly substance, now could be laced with fentanyl, and even a very small amount. I mean, you're talking about several granules of fentanyl can be fatal. All right.
Sure. You going to tell them about calling 911 for friend overdoses or anything?
Dave, you want to explain that law? So, obviously, we've used Narcan as an antagonist against opiate overdoses, and have many lives have been saved by the use of that substance. And if somebody feels that somebody that they're with is in a drug overdose state, it's important to call 911 immediately so emergency medical resources can get on scene. There is a provision in statute that if someone calls 911 that results in us being able to arrive on scene and administer medical care, that person can't be charged. So it's important that we get that medical resources there as quickly as possible, because what happens with these overdoses is that their respirations fall to sometimes 2 or 3 a minute, and then before they stop breathing. So time is of the essence for us to get there and administer that. All right, thank y'all.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.